All right, guys, we are live. Finally, we're here at the classic movie screening, and it has been one hell of a night here at the No Name Cinema Society. Started out with some technical issues, and now we're doing our last show of the evening. Normally, of course, we have the sound off, which is not going to happen tonight because of our technical issues. It would just start way too late. I'm Jonathan Betzler, one of your hosts. I'll get to the other guys in a second, but this is our 25th official episode of the No Name Cinema Society and our classic movie discussion. And tonight we're going to talk about the 1976 Western, The Missouri Breaks, as you can see right here behind me. There's a little poster image there from Missouri Breaks, starring Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando. Tonight's episode is sponsored by Javalia Coffee, so we're very excited about that. And let's go back to my boys here. First of all, J Money, we're here sort of at the end of the evening.
I love that we have sponsors now. This is fantastic.
Well, like, sort of, in the sense that I just did a commercial with them, and so they're paying for me to live. So it's sponsored by Javalia Coffee.
Like, literally sponsored by it, in the sense that, yes.
Pretty much. And this is Dave Joseph, the guy who originated all this madness.
Did you pitch them about the show? I mean...
I was busy doing other things, quite frankly. I'm sorry to if that disappoints you.
Well, call them up. Let them know. We can work something out.
Because obviously our target audience is their target audience. So yeah, it's been a crazy night. So let me just re-explain where we're at here. Normally we have 4 shows a night: the current, the indie, the classic, which is now, and the sound off, which is just a freeform segment. And the freeform segment always has my top 5 of the evening. So tonight, since we're doing top 5 Brando films, we're going to roll it into this. And so we'll have an extra long classic movie discussion, and then followed by the top 5 Brando films. So that's our situation for the evening, because we had some issues with YouTube that, guys, we still don't really understand, and we're going to have to get to the bottom of it. We found a workaround, though.
YouTube hates us. YouTube is trying to put us down.
Maybe we're just too popular now, and that's
popular. Yeah, they're scared that we're going to screw their bandwidth, and
But our viewers found us anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Facebook and Twitter, we can make it happen. All right, so the trivia for this movie that was on Facebook and in our last episode was that between them, I said between them, the 2 lead actors of this film had 20 Oscar nominations and 5 wins, and that's Jack Nicholson and Marlon Brando. Jack's won 3. And he's had 13 nominations. 12 nominations for Jack, 8 nominations for Brando, and 2 wins. Brando won first for 1954 for On the Waterfront, then again in 1972 for The Godfather, and then Jack won 3 years later, 1975, his first Oscar for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then in supporting actor category in 1983 for Terms of Endearment, and then most recently in 1997 he won Best Actor for As Good as It Gets. This is the first and only time that they have acted together. So basically, Jack Nicholson in this movie, The Missouri Breaks, is the leader of a gang of cattle thieves. And Marlon Brando is the gun hired to bring down in one of the most unique westerns you will ever see. Now, J Money, we screened this film on January 12th in New York, and J Money was present. So I know it. Actually, I don't know too much, but I have a basic sense of what J Money thinks about this. So what J Money and I couldn't stop talking about is, what is Davie going to say about this movie? So to end the suspense, I'm going to let Davie go first. Davie, what did you think of The Missouri Breaks?
Yeah, it's a little too silly for its own good, but I don't hate it.
Well, all right then. Now, during the screening, I did, because we want people to watch the show, J Money mainly was pretty mum. Like, he threw out some things here and there, but they weren't really opinion related. They were more just sort of like, have you guys considered X, Y, or Z? Because he's that kind of a guy. And he also didn't vote in the brackets, even though he could have. So because it wouldn't have mattered. But that's beside the point. We'll get to that later on. So J Money, all these people tuning in right now who were at the screening, they really want to know what you would have said if you were there.
Well, I really enjoyed this. I think it's just a question of whether or not I enjoyed it for the right reasons.
That is a really good question. It was what I taped the discussions, or I started to tape the discussions now that we've started referring to them on our show. So I actually re-listened to the full hour-long discussion that we had after this movie. So I'm fully prepped for that. The people asked me that I not use their voices on the podcast tonight, so I can't play you any audio, but I can sort of sum it up for you. And it was one of the more fascinating discussions. Would you agree with that, at least, J Money? It was a really interesting discussion in terms of like the feedback, the way that people were interpreting this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember?
And JB assembles a wide variety of professionals within the entertainment industry, so I think everybody brings a certain different like element to what they're thinking about when they think about this movie. And it was definitely fascinating to hear everybody's different take as people that are actually involved in acting and directing and producing. So
the reactions were extremely mixed, and I had forgotten how mixed until I re-listened to it all. And if I had to sum it all up, like and sort of like cull what everybody said into like one overarching through line, is that the story itself was pretty lame, but it was fascinating to watch. And I think that almost everybody agreed with that, but it was the value they were attaching to that. Like for some, it was so fascinating to watch that they liked the movie, and for others, the story was so lame that it doesn't matter how fascinating it was. Like it didn't add up to anything. And the discussion centered on three things that we're going to talk about: the tone of the movie. You know, we talked about tone a little bit in Win-Win, but it's really a big conversation in this one. The tone, the music, which is sort of related to the tone, I think, and also Brando, also sort of related to the tone, if you think about it. Those are the three things that really kept coming up over the course of the hour-long discussion. Is that about how you remember it, J Money?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, really, I think the centerpiece of that is Brando, because that sort of informs everything else that we're talking about here, but yeah.
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily relate it to the music, unless we really think that they had a certain type of Brando performance, and they felt like they needed to like have the music be like wacky enough to match it.
Little known fact: Brando played every piece of every instrument in the orchestration of the.
False. That is not true.
No, that's pretty much true. That's what I read.
He would have if he could have, but that is not true. Now, I actually I didn't share my thoughts during that screening, strangely enough, and I also, so I'm going to do that right now because I know everybody's wondering, because everyone's at the edge of their seats. I just don't know. I think I'm with J Money, more J Money than Davie. I wouldn't call the story lame per se, but I do agree it was riveting to watch. Like, what is going on? Like it was strange, but also almost, and maybe this is what J Money was going for. It was almost more interesting to like imagine what set life was like, and and what it must have been like to shoot it, than like the act was actually going on screen. With that said, there's a lot of things that I did like about it. Its strange bipolar nature of the film would probably make me fall short of calling it a good movie, but it's certainly worth watching. Whether it's worth rewatching or not was of much discussion in our January 12th screening, and we'll talk about that now. I feel like I want to start with tone, but it sounds like you want to start with Brando. So what do you, Davie Joe, you're the man here. What do you think we should start with?
I think they're intertwined, so I mean, either one.
All right. So where are you on this Brando's performance? Well, I guess let me just tell the audience, if you have not seen this movie, sorry to cut you off, Dave. It just occurred to me that it might be necessary to get into this a little bit. Brando is all over the place in this movie in a way that either fits or doesn't, depends on your point of view. He's very different in each scene, but consistently potentially psychotic, and he's funny, but almost uncomfortably so. The backstory is during filming he was somewhat uncontrollable. He improv nearly everything he said. Like whatever script was there, he ignored it and just did his own thing. He did different accent in almost every situation, and it's either brilliant or crazy. So with that sort of setup, Davie Joe, how do you decipher this Brando situation?
Well, normally I would. I don't know.
Spit it out.
It's just, he's definitely it seemed comedic, but it was kind of like a Joker-ish kind of thing because he's kind of just a homicidal crazy man. So I thought that was really neat. The problem is with the silly banjo music and some of the stuff going on around it. I just the tone was off, and I thought that they could have really made this. They could have taken his performance and put together a better movie with it.
But I mean, like you understand that they had a movie planned, and Brando is the one that sort of hijacked it.
Well, sure, but I mean, you got what you got.
So you're saying they should have adjusted everything around it.
Once you got the film, the film is the film. Like I don't know what you can do about that.
Yeah, because I mean, Jack and his band of thieves, they kind of play it straight. And I actually think Jack Nicholson's really good and believable and honest in this. I mean, they've got funny lines, but he's a complete character, you know.
Absolutely, and he's very, very good.
J Money. So I mean, like, just to point out that in his first statement, like, basically Davey hit on the three things. He talked about Brando, he brought up the music, and then the tone. So, you know, those are, it seems, the overarching elements for this discussion. J Money, how do you respond to Davy Joe?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I think that we talked a lot in the showing about how it was very unpopular at the time, and it's sort of become more popular now. And that all those three things, when you combine them, at this point actually add up to what I'll describe as accidental brilliance. I mean, I feel like this is actually a really postmodern film in a lot of ways that probably was so off kilter for the time being.
And in fairness, you didn't make that up, because I did say that one person in the screening, I did say that one person called it an accidental masterpiece.
Yeah, and I think that could be true. I mean, you know, even just now talking about it, I was thinking, like, if Brando wasn't in this film, would I really care about this film, or would we even be talking about it at all? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, this is a film that has so many different weird things going on, and, like, regardless of whether or not you think that his character, like, regardless of whether or not you think that Brando should have stayed the script or done whatever he did with his character, the fact of the matter is he created a character on screen that, at the end of the day, is kind of a nihilistic sociopath, and it's fascinating to see this character go through the motions. It's fascinating to see him interact with the other characters, regardless of whether or not, like, Brando, you know, should have played by the rules. I think he just created a really compelling character to watch. And,
yeah,
you know,
and in the screening, I brought up to much, I don't want to call it acclaim, but much agreement, that I brought up No Country for Old Men and the Javier Bardem character.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that we also talked about how the Coen brothers in general also love to mix tones, which is, you know, something else you're talking about here. There's a lot of weird interplay.
But again, I mean, like, the Coen brothers do it with complete control, I feel. And here it feels like it's just uneven.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Inadvertently so.
In a sense. Although, you know, in thinking about it more in hindsight, what I've thought about over the last couple of months is how much there's a comedic, I don't know, there's almost like it's a dark comedy in a way. Like, everything in it is there's some really funny moments, but ultimately it's actually a really dark movie. But it doesn't necessarily, you know, it doesn't necessarily embrace the darkness in a really overt way. So in a sense, I don't have a problem with some of the more sillier aspects, because it almost adds to the weird surreality of it. You know, there's like a Dadaist kind of quality to everything that happens because it's not intentional, but it all adds up to the same effect, which is this is a really kind of unsettling scenario with some really unsettling characters, and that actually works really well together.
And at face value, the story itself, I mean, like, again, I wouldn't call it lame like some people did in the screening, but the story itself is not groundbreaking or earth-shattering in any sort of, like, really compelling way.
I mean, you know, it's possible Nicholson would have been just suave and enjoyable enough to watch in the film on his own, and it would have been just about Nicholson's performance in this movie, I think, if they had cast somebody else in Brando's character. But if you put them together, it's a really weird. It's a kind of thing that makes it stick in your mind a lot stronger, I think, than otherwise. Like, I just think that it ultimately worked for our benefit now, not so much for people then, but for our benefit now, looking back on it.
Right. David Joe, how do you respond to that?
No, I think that's right. I just man, I just wish that the director had just kind of gone with it, and I feel like he was kind of fighting Brando, which.
Well, I mean, why would you let Brando sort of take over? I mean, like, and also let's not. You even admitted to it yourself. I mean, Jack Nicholson's really good on his own, so why not try and shape the movie to support his choices in that performance?
Look at it. If you're the director and you've got Brando in this film, you've got the bull by the tail. It's gonna go.
Or does the bull have you by his horns?
Well, he's going. Either way, he's going where he's going, and you can either adapt and make the movie with the performance that you got, or you can fight it and have this kind of uneven. I'm not suggesting that he fought it. I don't think that that's the case necessarily. I think we're making that assumption, but I mean, like, I seem to, in doing research for the screening, I discovered that he just sort of like gave up, and sort of let them do whatever they wanted, and just filmed it. And one of the people in the screening did talk about the direction a lot, and he felt like the scenes were really well shot. The wrestling scenes were really well choreographed and orchestrated. So I mean, like, do you disagree with that? And if not, or if so, do you feel like what specifically should the director have done? Sorry, you kind of froze up there in the middle of that.
Where'd you last leave me?
You were starting your question.
Did you hear what I said about somebody in the screenings that really liked the actual shot choices and the way?
Yes, and I agree. I agree with that. I think that the things that bother me about it are one, the music doesn't make a lot of sense. You need to do something to kind of.
And did you see who did the music?
No, who did do the music?
That's effing John Williams.
It was John Williams. Look, it's not that the music is bad. It's just that you can't. It doesn't work with this film.
Did you just feel like you needed to defend the music because it was John Williams?
Yeah,
he's capable of doing bad things, I'm sure. It was strange. The music was very strange.
But don't you feel like that fit? I mean, to me, that kind of works. Even though it's against character of the idea of the movie, it works because it is against the character of the idea of the movie. Like, I'm
not disagreeing with you. I was sort of acknowledging.
Yeah.
What Davie was saying.
Davie Joe. I mean, don't you feel like it's such a weird, oddball choice of orchestration that it actually kind of makes sense in a way that doesn't make sense? Like, it's a contrast to the idea of the film in general, but everything in this movie is a contrast to the idea of the film in general, right? I mean, it's a weird.
I mean, I just think that you got this performance by Brando, and you gotta kind of joker it up, I mean, like, just go with it, like, do some French horns.
All right, but I mean, like, how did he not go with it? On one occasion, Brando showed up in a dress and decided to perform a murder or a hit or whatever you want to call it in a dress. He just showed up in a dress. He let him do it. What else is a director to do?
You gotta throw some horror music in there. You gotta.
No, come on.
Something that builds on the absolute insanity, the craziness of what is going on.
But in theory, by playing it straight, doesn't that make him seem crazier within the world? By playing everything else straight, doesn't that accentuate the character's lunacy, potential lunacy?
I don't think it did. I think what it did was it made it seem like it almost made it seem intentional. It almost made it seem like, hey, I want this to be funny, and I don't think that was the way to go with it. And I think, I think that if he had done things like that to kind of support the craziness, I think that this movie could have been really, really good.
I don't understand why there's so much criticism here of the director when everything else is sort of in line, except for, I mean, like, why not say, hey, Brando, why don't you get your stuff together here? If he is the catalyst. Why can't it? And he's the one thing that's out of sorts. Why can't it be on him?
I mean, sure, it can be his fault, but at the end of the day, you've got the cellulose that you have when it's over. Like, that's it.
Celluloid.
Yeah, good point. You got to put the thing together.
Although it's funny that you did cellulose while doing this.
I believe that is a sincere malaprop. I think that you really gotta. You've got the film that you've got, and he didn't. He just decided, screw it. I'm gonna do it the way I wanted to do it anyway, even though this was not the performance that I had anticipated.
So you're saying they should have done he shot it, and in the editing room he should have done something else.
Absolutely, he had to.
Well, wouldn't you say then that the choice of music and the style of music supports him doing something else?
No.
Like J Money was saying, like that's a post decision. So in post he has this wacky Brando performance, so the music is there to match that.
He was going to use anyway into the film. Probably because they paid John Williams a boatload of money to make that music.
But no, don't forget, this is early John Williams. Like, he was not John Williams yet. This is before Close. This is after Jaws, but before Close Encounters. And he'd only done like 2 or 3 scores maybe at that point. He'd done 2 Spielberg films, and like maybe 1 or 2 other things. So he was not like the John Williams.
If I'm the director and I've got Marlon Brando doing this thing, and then I've got this music that is excellent music and exactly what I had anticipated wanting, I mean, I can see the temptation is to just slap it together and throw it out there. You know, why punish the people who did the thing that they were supposed to do?
But you know, at the same time, Davey Joe, it feels like such an artifact of the 70s. Like, I guess I feel like the musical style choices also seem to kind of line up with a certain, I don't know, sort of spirit of the 70s in a way, in terms of the cinema. You know, there's sort of a try-anything quality to this that I kind of appreciate. But even as you're talking about it now, I would really love to see a cut of this movie without any music whatsoever. Because I'm really curious. I bet like that could exist in and of itself in a way that would be pretty interesting.
Take the music from Jaws. Take the music from Jaws and put it on this film. It's a classic. Classic.
I mean, Brando and Bruce, pretty much the same weight at that point. They probably could have gone toe-to-toe, head-to-head.
Oh, ouch! Look at J Money making fat jokes.
Hey, what are you saying exactly there? That's not...
I'm just saying, what does it have to do? Poor Brando. First of all, Brando would get 100 pounds larger than he was here.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll tell you what, though. I mean, as probably as not cool as it was for him to do this, it's kind of awesome.
Right.
I mean, he just decided.
Well, I mean, I think we're sort of on board with that. It's. I mean, like the word I keep coming back to is compelling. Like, it's unique, but compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It seems like it was wasted.
You understand that, so you agree with that part of it, Davey Joe. But your reservations are your reservations mainly centered around the music?
I think it's got a lot to do with it. It's got a lot to do with it, and there's some other sort of silliness that goes on in the movie that I thought didn't fit tonally.
And bear in mind, too, just for our audience knows, like J Money and I watched this on January 12th. I feel like Davey Joe probably watched it on March 20th or March 19th.
Yeah, that's about right. You know, them wrestling around, in you know, some of the dialogue with Jack Nicholas and
Nicholson
son.
Not a golfer.
Sorry. Some of the scenes with the who's the actress?
Kathleen Lloyd.
They're excellent. I mean, they really are. But again, once you've got this film with this kind of craziness, I don't know that you want to. I would have cut any of the silliness out of that too, because there's a lot of kind of darkness there that's really good, and I would have just kind of gone with that. I feel like this movie needed to be a lot darker and a little more, I don't know, a little more
Okay, all
dour.
right. So you're saying that with, because Brando's so crazy, it should have been played. He should have been potentially more menacing.
Absolutely.
But he was fairly dangerous.
Yeah, he was. And that's why I feel like it wouldn't have been that hard to do had the director decided to
So
go.
and again, it sounds to me like you're really thinking about the music here. You're really thinking about John Williams' contribution.
That and the silliness with the wrestling and things like that. I just.
You mean the wrestling when they're sort of like starting to make out and stuff?
No, not the women. The guys were, when they're building the farm.
Oh.
See, now I really like that. I mean, I really like the guys, and they felt really like I mean, like they did. I acknowledge they feel like they were in a different movie, but I like that side of the movie too. Like I liked. It felt honest to me that they would wrestle around. They're the guys that aren't too bright, and and they're still youngish. I mean, like, Randy Quaid is still fairly young at the time, and I know they're old guys now, Harry Dean Stanton, but it felt realistic that especially like the followers, like they were, would fool around like that. Like it didn't feel disingenuous at all.
It did. You're right, and it was well done. It just didn't fit. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I'm having trouble understanding you, but I've also had like it's a strange movie and it's hard to completely understand it's in and of itself. So maybe that's part of why I'm not necessarily following exactly what you're saying, because I mean, like, as far as I can tell, like I'm, and maybe I'm too black and white about it, but it feels like there's almost like there's two movies. There's the one with Nicholson and everyone else, and then there's Brando and what he's doing. And they can sort of interact, but not in a comfortable way. How do you guys feel about? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, but at the same time, these are both characters that are outside the cultural norms, right? They're both characters that are doing things that are kind of considered, in a lot of ways, they're on their own menacing. I mean, as much as like Jack Nicholson and his band of marauders are lighthearted compared to Brando, they are criminals and they are people that are tempted to do terrible things. So it feels like these are both like outsized characters, and they're both talking about like sort of the dangerousness of the frontier lifestyle at the time, in a way that seems more, I think, natural almost, or realistic, because they're much more about their insanity,
Except I wouldn't describe Jack Nicholson as insane. Like, for example, like, I mean, I feel like all of Jack Nicholson's choices, and I forget his character's name, quite frankly, but all of his choices are pretty understandable. Like, they're sort of based on logic. They're not based on legality or morality most of the time, but there's logic in terms of his character's needs and desires.
Yeah, but I guess in a lot of ways, like, Brando represents like the furthest out idea of what Nicholson is doing, right? I mean, they're both characters that are working in this new frontier that doesn't really have a lot of laws. They make their own laws ultimately. They make their own ideas about what their ethics should be. And Nicholson has his
except he is breaking the law.
Well, he's technically breaking. That's what I'm saying. He's technically breaking the law, but he's also doing it as a self-serving way. And he's doing what he has to do to survive in this situation. Brando, in his own way, is also doing the exact same thing. He's doing what he has to survive in this weird, sort of lawless situation, but he's taken it to the nth degree. He's taken it in a way that makes him more isolated and more weird and crazier, and because of that, they're butting up against each other, but it's kind of the same construct. Like, neither of them are, like, safe people. Neither of them are people that, like, belong together in the same room, as with, like,
how do you guys feel about the choice for Brando to, like, I feel like whenever he was with different people, he would have a different accent. I mean, like, I'm not sure if I was the only one who noticed that. Yeah. Instead of, like, and I think it was a very conscious thing, but I mean, like, it's a crazy out of the box choice that, like, he would literally do a different accent, and nobody calls attention to it. But, like, when he was with the Kathleen Lloyd's father, played by John McLean, and he would do like an Irish Scottish thing, and then he was Southern when he was with Randy Quaid. And everyone he went to was doing a different thing. How do you guys interpret that?
Well, the Quaid thing made some sense because he was playing a character.
But then when he met up with Jack Nicholson, he had a regular voice.
Yeah, it gets a little weird then because he's supposed to be this Scotch-Irish guy, and then that goes away.
But I mean, I think it's purple. I don't think it's just like, lack of interest. I don't think it's like or lapse.
I think he was trying to be a crazy guy. I think he was trying to do the homicidal nut with a gun thing.
You always count on Davy Joe to like really simplify performances for everybody.
And that was kind of cool, but it just didn't work the way the movie turned out.
Well, I mean, that's your opinion. I think Jay Money disagrees.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really nice. I thought that was a really conscious decision on his part. I don't know whether or not that was because Brando was just like, I'm going to screw around and do whatever, or if it was because he thought so much about his character as creating like a mythology of his, his persona.
I would like to believe that. I honestly was interpreting that he believed his character liked to fuck with people.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about it. Yeah.
I'll go with that.
The other interesting little tidbit, that weapon that he used, particularly to kill Harry Dean Stanton, he invented that. Marlon Brando invented that weapon, saying it's the most efficient way to kill people.
It's a couple of sticks tied together.
Yeah. Now you know the secret.
Very sharp sticks, Davy Joe. Invented by the greatest actor of the 20th century.
And I'll tell you what, that shot with the rabbit was pretty great. I mean, that was. It looked like they killed a rabbit.
Well, we've covered a lot of things, like even just in the natural discussion, we've sort of gone over a lot of the things that I had in my notes, except some of the other performances. So let's talk about some of these supporting performances. We love Jack. We're mixed on Brando. Where are we on Harry Dean Stanton? Anybody? Crickets?
I thought it was good. He was in movie A, and on the movie A side, he was really good.
Yeah, I mean, and it's certainly a nice counterpoint to Jack Nicholson's character from a characterization point of view. I love Harry Dean Stanton, so I mean, I'm always going to say good things. Jay Money, you got anything?
What I liked about Harry Dean Stanton's performance in this is that he seemed like kind of an anchor in the movie. Like, he seemed like a really believable and also really solidly grounded character. And the movie definitely needed a few of those, so it was really appreciated. Yeah.
I also really liked Randy Quaid a lot, and say what you will about him now, but I thought he, I mean, he's very believable. I felt like he also was, this three-dimensional guy.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened?
Anything?
What happened to Randy Quaid? Huh?
Well, that's a topic for another time. Davy Joe, what do you think about Randy Quaid?
He was good. He was good, and he definitely, by the time, feel something because he does. I connected with him as a character. A lot of this, I thought that the whole gang kind of had that feel to them.
Yeah, Frederick Forrest is in there for a little while. Now, the audience, I don't know if because they haven't seen her since or whatever, but the audience loved Kathleen Lloyd. I did not. I felt like she was a weak link. What do you guys think?
I really enjoyed her performance. It's funny, since watching this, I've thought about it as almost like the way that she didn't really feel like she was playing a modern woman, right? And it wasn't like she was trying to figure out a way to bring that into an old-timey world. Like, she wasn't trying to play a woman that was in this time period. And it kind of reminded me in hindsight of Harvey Keitel's turn in The Last Temptation of Christ, where he brings a really kind of modern interpretation of Judas. It's a thing that I feel like you see a bit in the 70s in general, perhaps, and it's a thing that maybe it's a little jarring now, but I actually really enjoyed it at the time.
Even though The Last Temptation was in the 80s, but that's beside.
Sure, well, whatever.
Davy Joe, what do you think about Kathleen Lloyd?
Yeah, I think I liked her. I liked her, but she's maybe a little more modern than maybe the character called for.
Well, I mean, yeah. So is that saying you don't like her then?
No, I did like it. I did like it, but I mean, it's just it's the problem with this movie, man. Is it's
all over the place.
It's all over the place. I don't know, maybe.
But that's what J Money loves about it.
No, and he's bringing me around a little. Yeah.
Oh, look at that! We're convincing him. How do you like that?
Hey.
This is a first, everybody. I did not like Quaid. I actually didn't think she was, and I mean, I think there's a reason she didn't really work a lot in movies after this. She's attractive, but I didn't buy her performance. Like, it didn't, like, I understand. It sounds like you guys are saying either good or bad based on this concept that you didn't feel like she was, in the time period. I don't think that's as much of it for me. I think that it's more about just not, believing her execution of what was going on with the character. Like, I wasn't necessarily buying her, like her choices. They didn't, they didn't feel strong to me or committed, and it didn't feel like fully rounded. And that's part of the writing as well, maybe. And I'm not sure that that's true, because it felt like that there's potential for a three-dimensional character here in the writing. Like, she had stuff going on. She had internal conflict, between her father and her, blossoming love, so to speak. I feel like there's potential for stuff going on there.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't feel like she was fleshed out. I guess I feel like she was pretty fleshed out through the movie. I
mean, I feel like what I'm saying is I do feel like she was in the script. I just don't think she performed the script. You know what I mean? Like, I think she missed it.
What would you have changed about her performance? I mean, like, what can you think of something specific that you would have told her to do differently, or?
It's been a while. I'd have to think. I mean, like, I think the transition to falling for Jack Nicholson's character was not very believable. I also feel like that the conflict, the way she played the conflict between choosing between her father and what else was, like there's that's a situation rife for something, and it felt underexplored and under, just by her as an actor.
Yeah, I see your point. I guess for me, I read it all as her sort of general desperation to get out of that situation. Like, I don't know how much of her.
I mean, like, well, and that's, I think, the difference in when you're evaluating his performances, because I feel like the script is there. Like, It's not a perfect script, but I mean, at least in terms of this character, there's stuff. You know what I mean? Like, the moments are there. I mean, like, it's just like these individual moments. Like, I don't feel like she is fully as, I don't think she's creating depth that she could have as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thing. So one final thing before we get to the brackets, and let's talk a little bit about the themes of the movie. I've got a couple of what I think would be. What do you guys think are the themes of the Missouri Breaks?
Some
of them came up in the screening. A couple of them came up in the screening. What's that? Davey, you have one?
Yeah, well, let's see if I can articulate it. It's kind of something that happens in westerns a lot. It's kind of like changing the times.
Modernism?
Yeah, there you go.
Modernizing?
Right, like in the Wild Bunch.
How does the Missouri Breaks?
Well, it's basically
show that
they've been stealing the cattle, and now it's not going to work anymore, because there's the lay of the land is changing. The fact is that you can't set up these waypoints the way you used to be able to, and it's harder to get away with it. It kind of reminded me of like Open Range when they weren't able to free graze the cattle anymore, or the Wild Bunch when they see the car at the end, and they know that.
I would agree that both Open Range and Wild Bunch, like, that didn't necessarily feel as. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
It didn't feel as large a part of the Missouri Breaks. That was like a minor. Am I feedbacking?
No.
You are for me. Yeah.
Yeah, for me too. So anyway, the things that came up in our discussion, the most broadly were, and I think the biggest one is this sort of anti-establishment sentiment, which was a big part of the '70s, and also I would say a big part of latter-day westerns, and we can talk about that a little bit to some degree as well. And one that came up a lot, at least in terms of Kathleen Lloyd's character, is feminism and the evolution of feminism. So, what do you guys think about those two concepts?
Well, I think that certainly the first concept always. I mean, any movie from this era, it always plays into it. I think that just in general, you could throw a dart at a board and hit any movie that talks about like sort of the ethical ambiguity of making things work out in the end within the '70s.
Well, and also, I mean, like how the lines between good and bad become very blurred, and right and wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
like
the post-Nixon era.
Like Jack Nicholson's character is a bad guy ultimately, but he's a good guy to us. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
And he's a thief, and they kill a guy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At one point, sort of cold-bloodedly, if you really think about it, but you still root for them, and the guy who's getting robbed is ultimately the bad guy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is an era for people to sort of mix the nuances of what good and bad is. I mean, especially from a Western perspective, which was always based on really defined roles of might and goodness and badness.
And especially in a post-Watergate world, too.
Exactly. This is a post-Nixon kind of movie, and it feels that way because it's really questioning whether or not, who controls what powers and what that means, what the power that corrupts you means in that situation.
But even in the evolution of the Western, like over the years, like in the 30s and 40s, and into the mid-50s, it was very much white hat, black hat. And then in the 50s, pairing with something like The Searchers, where your hero is, he's a hero, but he's, like a horrible racist, and then even John Ford starts to deal with, blurring lines, and then once you get to the spaghetti westerns, I mean, like, mercenaries are heroes, and things like that. So even pre-Nixon, the western starts questioning some of these things, and I think this is, I don't know if it's the next step or it's in line with that. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, but I mean, it does feel like this sort of anti-establishment, message is the most key part of the film to me.
Yeah, but I would say with this movie, and especially with the movies from this era, it's also about a sense of free range. Like it's not just about the idea of anti-establishment as much as it's about the idea of individuality finding itself in a free establishment. I mean, there's a lot of movies that are coming.
Well, I mean, aren't they sort of tied together in the sense that like that's only accomplishable if you break down the current establishment type thing?
Well, they're tied together in this situation. I think that they don't have to be tied together. I think that they could be mutually exclusive if they wanted to be. I mean, I think in one sense you're talking about overthrowing an established community. In the other sense, you're talking about not prescribing to any kind of established community and just prescribe it to yourself and trying to figure out what that means. And I think it's coming for a reason. I mean, I think it's a very it's a big time for people to kind of explore their own individuality, their own sense of where they belong, and that there's this underlying spiritual quality to everything in the situation. So it kind of makes sense to me. But I don't know so much about the feminism part of it. I mean, I think that her character felt strong.
Do you remember that coming up in the?
Yeah, I just
remember that coming up.
It's a central theme. I think that she made that with the character. I don't know how much that was intentioned or not, but I also feel like that was.
Before we get to that, can we just let Davy Joe chime in about the anti-establishment?
Yeah.
Davy Joe.
Sure. Anti-establishment.
By the way, Davy Joe is the man.
Davy Joe does not want to participate in our timeline thematic discussion.
No, it was the bell going off at that exact second was awesome. No, I don't know. Is there a question? What am I? I thought I was gearing up for a feminism answer, and then you hit me with.
Okay, good. See, now you're going to disagree with my boy here. All right, tell me about the feminism part of it.
Well, I thought it was. I mean, I definitely think that they were pushing that button because she is ready to go, ready to kind of fight Jack, And then all of a sudden she just kind of like does this crazy thing where she says what exactly it is that she wants, and it just knocks him back. Like he doesn't even know how to deal with that. And I thought that was kind of brilliant.
Which him are we talking about?
Jack. I think it's the scene actually. Well, maybe not that scene, but it's the scene where she comes out and to see him after they kind of had this sort of testy exchange about capital punishment in a prior scene, and she just kind of she's the one that's completely straightforward, and he's the one who's a mess because of it. And I think that was kind of ahead of its time, and kind of a neat thing for them to do in the film, and it's, I mean, I don't know, it struck me as kind of being kind of neat and different.
J Money, you didn't know about the feminism. You weren't sure that this was a part of it.
Well, I think that she brings that to her character. I don't know if that was so much a bigger point for the film to make. I think that her character is written to be kind of autonomous one way or the other, and she's trying to run with that in a way that's, I think, interesting to watch, certainly. But I think that also gets to the part of the criticism you might have about her performance, which is that it doesn't seem like it kind of, doesn't necessarily take and do everything you want.
I mean, I think that there was like certainly an effort to have a strong female character in the film, and I think having that in the context of a Western during this time when women didn't necessarily have some of the rights and such that they have now, maybe felt like a feminist point of view to an audience that doesn't watch a lot of Westerns either. Because I mean, there's a lot of strong women in Westerns over the years.
Yeah, no, I see your point, definitely.
All right, so do you guys, before we get to the brackets, is there anything that I didn't cover that you guys wanted to as far as this movie? Not that we really figured it out. Like, I don't know if we really, like, I think all we have is more questions instead of just answers, but is there anything else you guys wanted to say before I moved on?
I'm good.
I will say that I really appreciated a lot of the sort of natural shooting that they seem to do. I mean, there's a lot of really great, expansive cinematography, ultimately, in this movie that I'm assuming was pretty much just them shooting on the fly. I don't know.
I don't know, but I mean, I've seen you all night, but this is the first time where I've really seen your hair. Like, maybe you're sitting lower now, but your hair looks really good.
Thank you.
Doesn't it? It really does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, slight tangent there, but I just wanted to have a call out to your hair. Our viewers disagree. They don't like your hair. So.
Curse it.
Another big detractor, we didn't talk about it much, and I meant to. John McLean, as Kathleen Lloyd's character's father, I think is terrible. I don't like her that much, but I think he is actually just like downright bad. I mean, possibly poorly written as well, but I mean, like, so over the top and in a way that's not compelling the way that Brando is. You know what I mean? And that is a big detractor in this movie for me. So, guys, what do you think?
I don't think it's... Sure. I mean, I don't think it affected my overall opinion of the movie, but he's definitely the more traditional version of his character, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, but I mean, like, even less interesting. Like, I just feel like there was so little there, so, I mean, like, his knee-jerk reaction was over the top. Like, his knee-jerk choices were just way over the top.
Well, are you talking about the ending, or are you talking about just in general?
In general, like throughout, like, as soon as he comes on screen. David Joe, you look really bored.
No, I think I really liked that character though. I just thought
Ascension to the rank.
He was.
I mean, like, have we discussed this movie enough? I know it's been a good 30 minutes, but did we come to some sort of like conclusion about it, or I mean, like, do we feel like it sounds like we're mostly recommending it? Am I interpreting that right?
I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, like, I when I called it one of the most unique films you've ever watched, you probably agree with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly interesting. I mean, so my closing statement would be extremely unique, but falls just shy of good.
Wait, good or great?
Good, I guess. I mean, like I wouldn't call it like a good, maybe great. I don't know. It's extremely interesting, but I mean, like, I don't know. Like, it's not like awesome. It has a lot of interesting elements. I'm not sure they all add up. You know.
It's not awesome, but it's extremely interesting, and I think that's
Okay.
spot on.
I mean, like,
I think that's spot on. Yes.
Good.
But see, I would definitely say it's still a good movie. I wouldn't say I don't know if I would say it's a great movie. I would say it's good.
All right, well, we're gonna find out just how good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, everyone really thanked me afterwards because it was such an out of the box choice at the screening.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's time for it to go up against something, and this is the one time of year that people really understand the brackets, these movie brackets. They're like, oh, this is what you've been doing all this time. So now is a really good time for Davey Joe to go over the rules now that we really understand what these brackets look like, now that everyone has filled out their basketball brackets. It's the same thing, but with movies, guys. So, Davey Joe, how do you feel about telling everybody what the rules are? He's got his glasses on for this moment. Take it away, Davey Joe. Davey Joe?
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's. Hold on. Let me click on this. Okay. All right. Seating. The seating criteria varies from bracket to bracket. The films are shown at JB hosted screenings, and they need to be 15 years or older.
We need to update this, J Money.
Yeah, we do. We say that every time now.
Yeah.
Would you want to just change the rules to 16 years? I'm kidding. Either way, you gotta change it. Voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period. They must see the film in JB's presence, and JB is ineligible to vote unless the vote matters. He can break ties. Thank you.
All right. That was this is how J Money reacts to David Joe's reading the rules. So anyway, all right. So this time the Missouri Breaks is only in one bracket. It's a newer bracket. I don't think it's come up in the show yet, but I created these genre brackets for different genres. I did action movies, musicals, sci-fi films, and westerns. So has that come up in the show yet, guys, at all? These genre brackets?
I feel like it did, but I can't remember why. Maybe musicals?
Yeah, I don't. Dude, we did Oklahoma versus Purple Rain.
Yeah.
Right. So we did do it. So we did the musicals, and Davey was pleased to see Purple Rain win that one.
Philistine.
Now we are doing Missouri Breaks, which is a 16 seed. Now you audiences that are following the tournament know that that's not very good. Mm-hmm. And it goes up against number 1 seed, Unforgiven. And it's a very rare thing. It's in the NCAA tournament. It has never happened that a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. In our tournament, it has happened once when the Searchers lost. Searchers, the number 1 seed, lost to The Shining in the bracket of best films not nominated for Best Picture.
What? So,
yeah, Searchers lost. I feel like I've said this to you before, and you had that same exact reaction. So at least you're consistent. So Unforgiven is the number 1 seed. Missouri Breaks is 16. Unforgiven has come up several times over the course of our show in these brackets, mainly as it relates to Gene Hackman's performance. Joe, you get to vote first.
Unforgiven. Easy.
Unforgiven, why?
It's a consistent tone, as you like to point out.
Now that is particularly in relation to this movie.
Yes, and not so much with Missouri Breaks. And I love the movie. I think that it's really well written, and I love the performances of all 3 of the major players. So I just Unforgiven's one of my favorites. So I'm gonna stick with it.
Would you say Unforgiven's your top 100 of all time?
Yes.
Wow. So it's appropriate that it's a number 1 seed in the Western bracket.
Yes.
And now, J Money, the voting was unanimous before we got to you. If you remember, I won't reveal the winner, but before we got to you, there was no point in you voting because you couldn't have changed anything. So we decided to not reveal your vote the night of the screening. So everyone that's watching now, many of them, I believe, attended the screening. They don't know how you would have voted, so everyone's going to hear it for the first time right now.
Yeah.
And when you vote, don't necessarily reveal who the winner is, because I know you know. But tell me what you would have voted for.
Well, I also would probably vote for Unforgiven, and I think it's partly because, especially if you're going to contextualize this in terms of westerns, if you're going to contextualize this in terms of like what will win out in this genre, I certainly really loved Missouri Breaks in a lot of ways, and maybe we're going to debate whether or not we can call it a great movie, but I really enjoyed it, and I would watch it again certainly. But in terms of a western, in terms of what I actually would want to frame as an ideal version of a western, Unforgiven's going to win for me. I think Unforgiven to me is an archetypal western for me in a way that Missouri Breaks can't really kind of.
Certainly, it's when it comes to being a postmodern western, and it also, like the Missouri Breaks, it has this concept of who's good, who's bad, like it blurs those lines.
Yeah, but
almost in an extreme way.
In an extreme way, but also still within the boundaries of what I think anyone would describe as a western. I mean, it has.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so it's not like a lot of our discussion about the Missouri Breaks is about how much it breaks outside, no pun intended, of what our conventions are for that for that kind of movie, and also about the time period.
Wait a minute, that pun was really intended?
That was definitely not intended. That just happened.
Okay.
Naturally. But I think that we're fascinated by this movie because it's hard to nail down. Unforgiven, not at all hard to nail down. Definitely fits in a very specific area, and it is at the top of the heap for me. Maybe not, my favorite western ever, but like definitely in the top, 20 westerns I've ever seen, certainly. So from that, point of view, it definitely wins in this matchup for me.
Okay, I also, not that I have a vote, but I mean, I would also say for Unforgiven. And so now it's time for me to reveal the winner, which happened at the screening that J Money was at. Unforgiven, Missouri Breaks, Unforgiven being a 1 seed, Missouri Breaks being a 16 seed, and the winner is. It was unanimous, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, give me
the
a break.
Missouri Breaks defeats Unforgiven.
Yeah.
J Money, you watched it happen. You're laughing.
Oh my God.
You watched it happen.
I mean, that's what happens when you invite a bunch of actors into a pizza studio. Right? Yeah.
Oh my God! And they're all watching. These actors, you're insulting them to their faces.
I can't see them right now. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. No, hey, look, I am always excited to see the underdog come through. I think this will really shake up your categories in general. I have no problem with Missouri Breaks in general. I mean, I really find it a fascinating movie. So, more power to it to make it this far.
Davie?
I don't get it. I mean, like, what? That's ridiculous. Were they kidding?
So for the second time ever, we have a 16 seed and a 1 seed.
To be fair, there's a bunch of Unforgiven haters in that group. I mean, there were people that just already were not fans of Unforgiven, right?
Yeah, it was a very anti-Unforgiven sentiment when the vote came out.
Yeah.
All right.
Which I don't necessarily understand the Unforgiven hatred necessarily. There was a lot of anger about Clint Eastwood's performance. Yeah. It seems.
It's awesome, but anyway.
Well, some on Twitter they might disagree with you, so be prepared for that. And I mean, like, to Money's point, I don't know if I want to rewatch Missouri Breaks, but that audience certainly did. That rewatchability factor was very high in Missouri Breaks, and it was not so high on Unforgiven. It was not a world they wanted to revisit. Maybe I almost want to suggest that perhaps it was so dark that they didn't want to go back there. Or the Missouri Breaks, for all it's certainly not. I wouldn't say it has levity, but it's so compelling in its own unique way. And I think that's what I mean to hit on right there is it's so different. The Missouri Breaks, I think it stands out to them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that's sort of how I explain it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to unpack with Missouri Breaks. I think there's a lot more you can kind of like get out from multiple.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot in Unforgiven in terms of what it says about human nature, and like there's a lot. I think there's a lot going on in Unforgiven.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any like surprises in Unforgiven. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess I feel like Unforgiven plays it pretty straightforward for the most part. I mean, I feel like they kind of telegraph where things are going to go. Missouri Breaks, not so much. I think Missouri Breaks is a little more kind of up in the air, and there's more things to try to like figure out later on. I mean, the fact that we were trying to parse it right now, even.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what it boils down to. It's just being so different. Now, this is the part I'm going to move on. Are you guys cool?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the part in my script where I was going to like tease the sound off, so I'm all discombobulated now. But so I'm trying to decide if I should say what the next classic is going to be, or I should save that because it's I'm going in order of my script here. But basically, next classic is going to be April 18th, and we're going to be going back to 1990. If you look and we sit in during our big year in review, we did a special about 25 years ago, 1990 review. Check it out. It's a very popular, very good show. And we're going to be talking about one of the films that we brought up a lot in that broadcast, just to put a bow on our 1990 thing, because I screened the film recently, and so we're going to talk about that. One of our 1990 films will be our next classic, and that's going to be on April 18th, presumably at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. So, with that said, it's time to move on to the top 5, and I'm not prepared because I had to do that. I'm not prepared with my fun photo because it's in the sound off. It's in the sound off section. See, this is where everything goes astray. I think everything will be astray during this this one section here, this one transitional section. All right, time for top 5. Look at that great Brando photo that J Money got for me. I also have to turn a few pages of my script. Are you guys excited for the Brando top 5?
Hell yeah.
Pumped. Yeah.
So here is my caveat for my Brando top 5. Is I made a choice, and if we do other actory things, actory top 5s later on, we can change this up. But I made a choice not to make this the top 5 Brando performances, but instead the top 5 films that Brando appears in.
Okay.
Are we clear that there's a difference there?
Sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Look at how interested J Money is right now. I'm really excited by that.
I'm channeling Brando.
Oh, I see what you're doing. That's pretty clever. I like that. What are you doing, Davy Joe?
I'm just sitting here, man.
All right, number 5 of my top 5 Brando list. And I even watched some extra Brando films, to try and see if anything would appear in, but they didn't. I'm going with Superman, number 5, which came up once before, I think, in our top 5 comic book movies of all time. Obviously, he has a small role in this film, but it's still to this day remains the biggest payday per minute of screen time for any actor in history. Thankfully, he takes it pretty seriously, as opposed to the Missouri Breaks. But yeah, and the rest of the movie we talked about before. And obviously Superman is very much in the news right now with Batman versus Superman. It's a flawed movie, but it's really fun and interesting. That we just talked about Unforgiven because I really think that in this particular case, Gene Hackman once again steals the show. As sort of a villain type character. His Lex Luthor is outstanding. It's super well directed. Superman 2, I think, is the better film in the whole series. The more interesting villain. Lex Luthor's interesting, but the villains are a lot more up to Superman's level. Let's put it that way. And the other fun thing about Superman, as it relates to Brando, is it's probably the only movie to have created a Brando figurine, which is kind of a fun little concept here. So anyway, anything on Superman, guys?
I'm kind of blown away right now, but that's cool.
Blown away? How? Why?
I would have never guessed you to pick this.
Well, I mean, well, at the end, we'll see if you can. We'll see if you throw one in that should be there. You know, because
So this is
I went through his
Superman.
whole. Yeah,
This is the first one we're talking about right now.
yeah, it's the only one he's in.
So all right, I'm trying to remember the trial with Zod is actually in the first one, and then he comes back in the second one.
Yeah, and almost in a
Okay.
prescient kind of way, like leading up to the second one. Yeah, the trial with Zod is in the first one, and then they banish Zod in the first one, and then Zod comes back in the second one.
Love it. Okay,
So,
yeah.
are we clear? J
Yep.
Money, you got anything? You look confused.
No, I'm just trying to remember the performance. I mean, it's a really small role. I guess from my point of view, when I saw it, I always thought, oh, this is a cameo appearance. You know, so I guess I'm kind of surprised it would make the.
At the time, it was like the biggest payday. Like he made a lot of money for that cameo appearance.
How much money did he make? Do you know?
Oh, I don't remember the exact figure. No, it was in like not Ripley's, believe it or not. What is the Guinness Book of World Records for a time? But I don't remember exactly what the figure was. I mean, like, you know, for inflation, it's probably very, very large. But again, just to be clear, this is not the top 5 Brando performances.
Mm-hmm.
It's the top 5 films that feature Brando, which is entirely different. And I'll explain maybe at the end what would have been on and would have missed if I can.
No, I
just
get that. So, but I guess I'm also surprised that Superman would rank that highly for you then.
Well, I was too, but when I went through the list of films that he was in, I mean, he was in a lot of clunkers. I mean, like, you know, his most famous films are coming up, you know, but the rest of his work, and I mean, like, we'll talk about what's missing maybe at the end, but this next one also wouldn't make the list of top 5 Brando performances, but it's a great film, and it's one we've talked a lot about before. In fact, we had a whole show about it, episode 18.3. This is Apocalypse Now, where he plays Kurtz. It's another small role, and I mean, like, his performance was one that we debated on the show. I'm not a, you know, huge fan of him in this film, and I don't know how. I don't know. I guess it's similar to Missouri Breaks in the sense is like I'm not really clear on what he's thinking or what's going on there, and you know, I like the rest of the film without him a lot more, and I might have been on the only one that did that, you know, but I like the film a lot, you know. We all sort of liked it when we talked about it in episode 18.3. The surrealism is simultaneously effective and off-putting in a very good way. It's a hard film to quote-unquote enjoy, and I think we talked about that, but it's equally hard not to be impressed about it, especially the craft elements. You know, in our show, we particularly talked about cinematography and sound. If you want to hear more about Apocalypse Now, I think you can go back to episode 18.3, and you know, you can hear us talk about it. Do you guys have anything you want to add on to that?
Nope. No, it's good.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Although I think it's interesting that we're talking about a certain era of Brando throughout this evening that's like him off the rails, you know?
Well, again, this is about the films and not his performances, and I think now we're gonna get back to real Brando.
Well,
like my number 3.
All I would say is that the Brando that I'm familiar with is this era, so I'm not really, you know, like I only know Brando in the context of him being like a megastar that's unwieldy, you know, in a lot of ways. So it's interesting.
Right. Well, this next film was, you know, the film that was right before he was a mega. This is the film that made him a megastar.
Mm-hmm.
And this is A Streetcar Named Desire from 1951. And this is we screened it in the 2011 Oscar movie marathon. Brando, of course, is the only member of the cast not to win an Oscar. It's based on Tennessee Williams' play, as you probably know. It is mostly a 4-person cast, and everyone but Brando won an Oscar. Vivian Leigh, Carl Malden, and Kim Hunter all won the 3 of the other 4 Oscars. I always argue that this is the film that single-handedly changed screen acting forever. You know, ushering in the new age of the actor studio and method acting, more naturalistic performance styles, and this is the film that started it. And even still, if you watch it now, because of Tennessee Williams, sort of like he has some flowery dialogue, and Blanche Dubois is purposefully over the top a little bit in a perfect kind of way. It still leaves some audiences dry, especially at my 2011, or technically the screening was in February 2012, when it was having its 60th anniversary. It's a film that, but I mean, like, when people gravitated towards it and the performance styles, it took basically the whole decade of the 50s to get to where we are now. But I mean, slowly, I consider it the dividing point for screen acting. So anyway, that do you guys have anything on Streetcar?
I haven't seen it. I need to see it.
Oh my God! Well, maybe wait, because maybe it'll come up
Okay.
for one of our screenings at some point. But what about you, J Money?
Yeah, never seen it either. Sorry. The most of what I know about Streetcar, and I know I should see it, I know about Streetcar primarily from The Simpsons. The Simpsons, the parody musical version.
I don't watch a lot of The Simpsons, but I did see that particular episode.
Yeah.
And Streetcar, as you know, maybe you don't know, but it was directed by Elia Kazan. And as good as Streetcar is, the collaborators, Elia Kazan, Marlon Brando, would take it to the next level with this next film, which is number 2.
Mm-hmm.
This is On the Waterfront from 1954, 3 years later, and this would be the film where Brando would win his first Oscar. This particular scene is probably one of the most famous scenes in the film. Could have been a contender scene. Have you guys seen this one before I start, so I can know I'm talking to?
I've seen it.
That's a no?
Yeah, I haven't seen either. I've seen a lot of clips.
I have. I've seen it. I've seen it.
Oh, Davey Joe's seen
Well,
it.
if you've seen a lot of clips, then you're good. If you've seen enough clips, then who needs it?
Like, I live next to it. Okay, I live next to where it is.
Oh, and that's the same. You're right. Yeah, you're good. You're good. Who needs it? I would argue that this is one of the top 5 greatest performances of all time, Brando and On the Waterfront. It is extraordinary even today. And if at the time Brando was like, after The Wild One and Streetcar, Brando was a heartthrob. On the Waterfront is what made him into a legend. And recognized as the greatest living actor already, and he was young. The choices that he makes, detailed, nuanced, powerful, and he plays someone. We talk sometimes about how it's really hard to play someone that's not too intelligent, and that's the case of his characterization of Terry Malloy here. It is super naturalistic, and more so than Streetcar, because Streetcar, it has the Blanche character and it has Tennessee Williams. This is not Tennessee Williams. Its dialogue is even more naturalistic, and the setting is very gritty and real. J Money lives next to it, so it's even more of a showcase for method acting. If you do watch it, there's a scene in a park where he sits on a swing and plays with a glove. I don't have a photo of it, but I want you to just take special note of that scene and the choices with the glove and the detail of it. Terry Malloy is complicated and reluctantly heroic. He's a great character. Eva Marie Saint, who's on the right there, she's amazing. She is in our Best Supporting Actress bracket. She's the #1 overall seed for her performance in this. She did win an Oscar as well. There she is again. So all the performances in this movie are great. Carl Malden is in it again. It's pretty much a landmark achievement. So if this list were a list of the top 5 Brando performances, this would easily be #1. But again, this is about the list of Brando's greatest films that happen to feature Brando. So you guys, I imagine, have nothing on this because you haven't seen it.
I've seen it.
Well, you've seen it On the Waterfront.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you got?
No, I love it, and I think that you've got it in the exact right spot.
Because you know it's coming up next.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Godfather is I mean, like, I don't think there's any real question, but I mean, like, I don't know if I'm going to get a lot of disagreement, but who knows? This is what you had in mind, right, Davey?
Yes.
So it's one of my top 100 films of all time. Many critics would argue it's one of the top 10 greatest films of all time. We talked about it in my Gangster Top 5 back in episode 17.4. If you want to check out that top 5, although it did not make #1 on that list. If that whets some of your appetites, to go check that out. it's really Al Pacino's movie. It's another, like, Marlon Brando did win an Oscar for Best Actor for it, but I sort of would argue that it's kind of Al Pacino's movie. He's the one with the character arc. But with that said, Brando, has created here an indelible, iconic character here, which is not easy to do. Like, the speech, everything is all him. Like, he makes all those choices in this movie, and he's thinking at a level of detail that a lot of us are just not used to, and it's kind of amazing to watch. Ingenious choice after ingenious choice. The direction is pretty good too. It's rich with texture and subtext. It's meditation on family, loyalty, immigration, violence. I mean, I don't think there's any question it's one of the most important movies of all time. What about you, J Money? Are you on board with this?
Yeah, it's a piece of shit. What are you talking about? I'm kidding.
No, seriously.
I'm kidding. Yeah, no, it's a great movie. Come on, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Listen, if anybody would like Godfather, and hey, it wasn't number one on my gangster list. But there's no argument with being number one on this list.
Yeah, no. Well, no, I don't have any.
Well, you haven't seen On the Waterfront or Streetcar Named Desire, and I know you're not going to put Superman. So your argument would be Apocalypse Now. You might put Apocalypse Now higher.
No, I might put On the Waterfront higher, based purely in terms of its
Legacy?
Power within the industry. That's all I'm going to put that out there. Also,
are you sure you don't want to see it first before you put it number one?
I should probably see it first before I make a statement like that. I absolutely agree. But I mean, you pointed out that it was a major turning point. You pointed out there was a major turning point for the way that the industry worked. And I don't think Godfather was a major turning point. I think it's an indelible movie that created mythology in this country, and it's a high watermark for like a pop cultural point. But I don't think it changed the industry. Whereas On the Waterfront maybe changed the industry.
The movie industry?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, we're talking about the way that the performances were naturalized in On the Waterfront, right?
Yeah, but again, I feel like that started with Streetcar 3 years earlier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then.
Whenever I teach classes or anything like that, Streetcar is always to me the demarcation line. And it wasn't an overnight thing, but Streetcar I feel like was the catalyst to everything. What do you got? I mean, there was objections to Superman on this list initially, which I sort of understand. But what do you feel like is missing?
Well, that's the question. Missouri
I'm not going to
Breaks,
put Guys and Dolls on there. I think Guys and Dolls is a great show, but I don't think it's a great movie.
Yeah, where's Missouri Breaks?
So Superman's better than Missouri Breaks?
I do think Superman is better than Missouri Breaks.
All right.
I don't know.
You don't know about that? So Missouri Breaks should have been up there. I'll tell you the two films that could be controversially not on there. The Wild One from 1950, which has really introduced the world to Marlon Brando. But it's not. I mean, it's not that great a movie. Like, it's good and it's iconic. For his from introducing bikers to the making bikers cool, and talk about certainly a pop culture sort of landmark. I would go with The Wild One, but I don't think it's that good of a movie, and certainly not I guess Superman hits differently in sort of an age group thing, but I tend to like older movies anyway. But The Wild One doesn't do it for me. Anything really Stanley Kramer's involved with usually doesn't do it for me. And the other one is that would make a best Brando performance list, but does not make this one. And this one is a little more controversial. I went back and forth on it, but Last Tango in Paris is the one that might be really controversial. And it's such a hard movie to watch. I think I might actually have some photos of it. But I mean, with that said, if I were doing a list of greatest Brando performances, I would make it. I would make it number 2. In terms of performances, he's extraordinary in this movie. On the Waterfront-esque. Like it's an outstanding performance. I just don't know how much the movie, resonates long term. It doesn't make you feel. You have a dirty feeling afterwards. It's complex, which is good, but I don't know. I mean, like, I don't love it. I don't love the movie. So I don't know. So I mean, like, I at least wanted to address that I did sort of consider it, and that's what I came up with. What do you guys? Am I awful for having Superman over Last Tango here?
I haven't seen Last Tango. I need to do that.
You should wait till we have our screenings. So you don't like waste all your time, and then you got to rewatch it.
Okay. All right. I can do that.
Johnny?
What about The Freshman? You left off The Freshman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, I did leave off The Freshman.
I'm kidding. What about One-Eyed Jacks?
Okay. Interestingly enough, I watched One-Eyed Jacks. Are you looking at the photos that I sent you?
I'm looking at IMDb to remind myself of what else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I re-looked at my IMDb just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. But
Yeah.
I did. This is One-Eyed Jacks. I did watch One-Eyed Jacks specifically for this top 5 because he also directed One-Eyed Jacks, and One-Eyed Jacks is a mess of a movie. One-Eyed Jacks also might make the performance list because he's really, really good in it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a mess of a movie. I assume you haven't seen One-Eyed Jacks. You're just like throwing titles out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, once you did, I think you'd be on board with it because it's sort of all over the place. It's got Carl Malden again. It's not a well-made movie at all. It's a movie you can actually point to where like the direction is off. But it's worth watching. But it's certainly it's not that good of a movie. And again, I think there's all these movies like Sayonara, all these movies in Brando's career that he's very good in, but the movies aren't that good.
What about Viva Zapata?
I've not seen Viva Zapata.
All right.
Wasn't there a movie with a...
And you know what? You haven't either, so you don't get to comment. Are we going to spend the rest of our time online doing this, going through his double-checking?
Wasn't there a movie on a boat? Wasn't he on a boat?
Mutiny on the Bounty.
Ah, that one. Was that good?
Yeah, Mutiny on the Bounty is not... The 60s version of Mutiny on the Bounty is not very good.
Well, that is Mark Antony and Julius Caesar.
I haven't seen that.
Ah, there.
Are we actually going to do each of his IMDb credits?
What about The Island of Dr. Moreau, where he played the titular Dr. Moreau?
Yeah, that's not a good movie. That falls in line.
This is actually fun. Let's keep doing this.
I saw him live on stage one time.
Brando?
Yeah. Back in 2002, maybe? 2003.
Doing what?
Yeah, it was a Michael Jackson concert, which personally I wasn't actually there to begin with by choice, but that's okay. But I went to this concert, and there was a 20-minute kind of like tech rehearsal part of it where they brought a couch out, and then eventually Brando wandered out on stage and sat down on the couch and lectured the entire Madison Square Garden audience about why we were all terrible people. And that's my pretty much overall defining Brando moment for me personally.
I bet.
That is so
well, I mean, like,
awesome.
listen, one of the things that you need to watch for a future sound off is Listen to Me, Marlon. My number 3 film of 2015.
Yeah.
And you saw it, right, Davey?
I did.
So, I mean, like, I couldn't put it on this list, obviously, but it's, it's a fascinating portrait of a very complicated person.
He was booed. He was booed by the entire MGM audience at one point. So there you go.
No surprise at all.
Nice.
But he was still a great artist. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting doing this project. For the top 5 is obviously there's some things I didn't see, but so many films that I did see, and even he's very good in. A Dry White Season is another. He's really good in A Dry White Season. It's not that good of a movie. Like, I mean, Superman may not be have a lot of depth, but it's a fun movie. And it's pretty smart as far as superhero movies goes. I certainly still prefer Superman 1 and 2 to any other Supermans that have come out. So I mean, like, and it's a movie that I enjoy to rewatch, and it's fun to re-explore. I can't say that about a lot of these other movies that he decided to do. So, in justifying Superman, that's what I have to say about that. So, I mean, I understand your surprise, and I was prepared for it, but I stand by it so far.
All right.
And I do. The Missouri Breaks. I mean, we talked about it a lot. I liked it, but it's certainly not enough. Certainly, I don't like it more than Superman. You know what, Davy Joe? Do you like Missouri Breaks more than Superman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Maybe not more than Superman 2, but more than Superman.
So it's ballpark.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Let's. What do you say we wrap it up?
I'm down.
Okay.
It's been a strange evening, everybody. Like I can't around 4 o'clock Pacific time. We were, at least I was starting to have panic attacks, and then they were having panic attacks. It's hard to explain what happened, but it's not our fault. And we're going to really have a long talk with YouTube if we can find someone to talk to there about this. I'm still pretty upset about it, but we found a workaround and we're here. But I don't like being late. We did such a good job the last few weeks of getting this all together that I feel very frustrated that tonight sort of went off the rails. But what I can tell you is our next movie is, and hopefully everything will be back to normal by April 18th when we start with our current feature, which is Criminal. I really have no idea what this movie's about, and I hope I don't find out before April. I guess I've got to see it April 15th or so. And I know it's got Kevin Costner, Ryan Reynolds, Gary Oldman. And it's our second straight April film that stars Gary Oldman. Because last April we did, gentlemen,
54.
Child 44.
Child 44.
Child 44.
And which is our episode 7. If you want to go back and look at episode 7, and see what we had to say about Child 44, and then you'll be ready for us come April 18th when we talk about Criminal. 8 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m. Pacific. We got an indie spotlight happening at 8:30 Eastern. We'll have a classic, a 1990 classic, at 9 o'clock Eastern on April 18th. And I think we'll have the sound off back, guys, where we're gonna do some of the things that we couldn't do tonight. We're gonna do another tweet beat and Davey's diatribe. We're gonna talk about our. We're gonna sort of talk about our year-end, some of the feedback we got about our year-end review shows. So. All that'll happen hopefully next time, and we'll be prepared for any eventuality. All right, thanks again for sticking with us tonight, and thanks for watching in spite of everything. I really appreciate it, guys. Do you have anything you want to say?
I'm good. Thanks for tuning in.
And by the time you tune in next time, Excuse Orange will be national champions, right, Davey?
Oh, if there's a God in heaven.
If there's a God, if there is so if they do not win, then you all know there's no God in heaven, everybody. So that's just something to bear in mind. By the time most of you watch this, the 2016 national champion will be crowned, and if it is not Syracuse, there is no God in heaven. You've heard it here first.
That is not necessarily what I meant.
J Money, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, go sports ball, whatever it may be. Go that.
See, when he says stuff like that, it makes me feel like he's condescending to me because I enjoy sports. But I'm just sharing that with you.
Not you, Davy Joe. There's a difference.
Oh, okay.
Just go to some.
We watch sports differently.
Go to some art thing and have fun.
I will. Thank you.
I love that no one's fighting with me. They're fighting with each other. This is so rare. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed our show tonight, and we'll talk to you next time. And keep subscribe to our YouTube page and keep in touch on Facebook and Twitter. Ask us your questions on Twitter. We'll eventually get to them. And yeah, have a good night.